Hi everybody, it's Ted Char with Jet PHC, and Ray Lewis is with us today to talk about transformation. Ray is a former professional baseball player with the Mets and a pastor, and he's been involved in communities across the nation for many years. Ray, welcome.
Glad to be with you, Ted.
And introduce yourself to us.
Well, I am Ray Lewis, and I am involved in the faith community in Des Moines and the community in general. I've been here for now 31 years, if you can believe that. I made a mental commitment for 2 years, 31 years ago, and 2 extra kids. So it's been great experience.
Excellent. Hey, as we have talked, you know that yours connects with me, and I think that it connects with a lot of people.
Okay.
But your mom was instrumental in your own transformation, and I was wondering if you could take some time to tell us about your mom's story.
Okay. I grew up in New Orleans, in one of the tougher, impoverished neighborhoods. And just to put it in context, I'm 61. I just turned 61 the other day on the 7th. Which means I grew up in a different Deep South. It was a segregated, separate but equal Deep South. I lived in an all African-American neighborhood. There were no whites in my neighborhood, no whites in my school, from the janitor to the principal. My mother grew up in the country with a very large family, without a father, with untrusting siblings, and had a lot of horrible things done to her as a young woman. So she left as a teenager and moved to New Orleans and met my father, Ray Lewis Sr., which they married, had one child, and when she was, I think, 6 months pregnant with me, they separated. Very hostile, aggressive person, mean, all of the above. And so my mother was on her own, without an education, a beautiful young lady, looking to care for 2 kids, and then 3 kids, and then 4 kids. So we have, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. I'm the second. My sister's the oldest. We have 4 different fathers, 4 biological fathers, which made it very complicated and confusing when we went to school. Who's your dad? So-and-so. Well, who's your dad? Well, so-and-so. Well, who's your dad? So it was tough growing. It was tough growing up, and my mother, bless her heart, did the best she could, the best she knew, to care for 4 kids without an education in the deep segregated South, washing dishes, cleaning floors, and scrubbing bathrooms, and working in restaurants, 2, sometimes 3 part-time jobs, ironing clothes for people, and just a remarkable woman. But in the meantime, she drank to overcome, I assume, a lot of the frustrations that she experienced, and trying to find some kind of emotional, psychological release from all that had happened to her. And that became a problem. She was really an alcoholic, chain smoker, alcoholic, but did the best she could for us. So anyway, that's the genesis of how I grew up. In a neighborhood without a father. I always admired the families who had fathers who came home at a certain time, ate at a certain time, had, the father chair in the room, the one that only the father sits in. Well, we didn't have a father's chair. Not only did we not have a father, we didn't even have a daddy's chair in the house at all. So I enjoyed watching wishing that was my life. So my outlet was sports. I found some resemblance and semblance of identity through sports. I became very, very good at playing, but for different reasons, Ted. Not because I loved the sports, but mostly because I loved to hear people call my name. It gave me a sense of identity. It made me feel special. It hid some of the deep bruises of growing up poor and separate and without a father, and not having some of the things that other kids enjoyed in my neighborhood. So the harder I worked at sports, the more accolades I got, and it became just a vicious cycle. And you just can't believe how much time I spent trying to obtain that, and how serious an athlete I became because of that. But nobody knew it. They just thought, oh, this kid's talented, man. He's good. He's quick. He's strong. But they never knew that the driving force behind it was affirmation. My mother and my father never attended any of my games. Not Little League, not middle school, not collegiate, not professional, ever. And that, Ted, was a real means of resentment for me, along with some of the other scenarios that I just pointed out to you. Living in a highly charged, racist Deep South. So to say the least, I was a confused young man, bitter, confused, looking for affirmation, and thinking that money was the way out. That was my mantra. Make money. Make a lot of money. Because the more money you make, the happier you're going to be, the more pain will be relieved. So make money. So that's what I set out to do, to make money. And before I became a professional athlete, I made money, so I became a drug dealer. And of course, as a little kid, we stole, we committed crimes, and we did all of the stuff that the older seasoned criminals taught us to do. And so that's how life lived, like a dual existence, because on the one side, I was this prized blue chip athlete, but on the other side, I was this hurt, lonely, broken kid that wanted so much and felt that I had missed so much in life.
Yeah. Now you came through a transformation period, and that in many ways was initiated by your mom's transformation. Describe her transformation for us.
Yeah. I guess, God had been working in my mother's life for quite some time. I mean, she never went to church with us, but a few times she sent us to church. And we'd take the offering money and buy candy, not put it in a plate. We'd buy candy afterwards and pop. Tell you how involved I was. I couldn't wait until the sermon was over so I could go buy some pop. But my mother had this emptiness as well, and you can imagine how deep it was. One day, she heard a radio broadcast by a guy, I think in North Carolina, named Oliver B. Green. And he had a radio program. I forget the name of it. But Oliver B. Green was the preacher. And at the end of his messages, he would always give a strong invitation. You know, he'd say, if you're listening to this radio right where you are, get on your knees and call out on the Lord, and he'd save you. Well, that touched my mother, and she did exactly that. Got on her knees at the bequest of that invitation and poured out her broken heart to the Lord. And God saved my mother. Now, that was probably in 1976, okay? Because in 1977, I was climbing up the athletic ladder and got drafted to the New York Mets in the 4th round. And thought that, you know, I was on my way. I guess my mother and I had two different conceptions of what it means now to be successful and on your way. Because she would tell me that she had found life's answer. And I would argue, no, Mama, I'm finding life's answer. And it's a Benjamin, right? And so 1977, my mother began to grow in Christ. And I saw a life change. And he took away the alcohol, took away the tobacco, took away the clubs, took away the relationships, illicit relationships. And my mother changed. I mean, she really became beautiful before our eyes. You know, you talk about restoring beauty from the ashes. That's exactly what happened in my mother's life. And until she experienced a measure of peace, you know, I had no idea what peace looked like. But inside, I know I needed something better than what I was questioning for. But it seemed like she found it because her life changed, her smile changed, her attitude changed, her language changed, her dress changed. And she began to talk to us about this Jesus Christ. You know, that the answer to your life is finding the Lord as your personal Savior, and that if you do that, son, he would change your life. And at that time I was married. He will heal your marriage and show how to be a father, because I had a daughter at that time. So he would do all these things for you. And I thought, yeah, right. You know, this at this time I thought, because every portrait I saw of this Jesus Christ that she talked about was white with blue eyes and blonde hair. And I was like, look, Mama, we live in a racially charged, deep, segregated South, right? Where we have no relationship with white people. We are enemies to them. They are enemies to us. This portrait seems like it looks more like them than me. You know, the funny thing, Ted, in most religious homes, there was 3 pictures, 3 portraits among the family portraits. There was John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Jesus Christ with the blonde hair and the blue eyes. Interesting. So I rebelled against that, I thought I was smart and did my work. We didn't have Google then, so I did my investigation and found out that there were so many, countless, billions of Muslims in the world. So I thought, maybe that's the best religion, since most people are gravitating to it. Fastest growing religion. And Mom kept making me aware that this Jesus Christ that she proclaimed was not white or black or brown, or he wasn't for any race, that he was beyond race, beyond color, that he came to give grace, and grace was greater than race. And at that point, I couldn't see it. But God allowed some things to transpire in my life to get my attention. I got disenchanted with my career, and I left New York and came back to New Orleans and to deal more drugs, because I realized that all the accolades from sports didn't make me feel any better. The money that I never had, that I now had, didn't make me feel any better. All the parties and all of that and signing autographs didn't make me feel any better. Wearing a Mets uniform and traveling across the country and meeting people didn't make me feel any better. So what's the use in staying here? And so I was really headed for a bottom. And I came back home to everybody's amazement, and just went crazy with drugs and carousing and clubbing and hanging out with the boys and just being wild. And here comes my mother again. You need Jesus in your life. And if you had him in your life would change. You would be forever changed. And you would find the peace that you're looking for. We got to the point where my wife and I were not believers at that point, and we would literally hide from her. You know, she would come over to the house singing some songs I never heard. You know, I'm from Motown, man. I remember Smokey and the, you know, the Temptations, but she wasn't singing those songs anymore. She was singing How Great Thou Art and songs of that nature. You know, Amazing Grace, you know, and that was strange to me too. So we had this peephole, this little glass you can peer through, and people look so skewed on the other end, so see it was her. And we'd hush everybody in the house, like an unwanted bill collector. Shh, shut up, don't say anything. It's quiet, and maybe she'll leave. And she'd knock and ring the doorbell, and we wouldn't answer because we, were really being convicted about this Christ that she was talking about. And my mother was a relentless evangelist, relentless. So she would slide a track under the door like you would cheese to a rat. We'd pick it up and read it and toss it, or see if we could roll it up and smoke some joints in it or whatever, But the more we saw our mom, and the more we looked at our own lives plummeting, cascading over the cliff, falling into a darker place, what she said started to have some merit. And one day she invited us over for dinner, cooked a beautiful meal. She's so slick, and a nice dessert. And she opened up the scriptures to me, to Isaiah 55. And from Isaiah 53, that talks about Savior. And she pointed out so clearly, better than I had ever heard from any preacher, how the sinless died for the sinner, and the guiltless died for the guilty, that he took my place, that he was wounded for my transgressions and bruised for my iniquities, and all the chastisement of my peace was placed upon him. But with his stripes, I was made whole. And she explained that in great, clear detail, that this is why he came, to rescue me from this condition, this sinful condition that I was in, that nothing else could heal. No amount of money or fame or accolades could heal. And so, for the first time in my life, Ted, I got a clear understanding of what she meant about this Christ and what he came to do. And now, I didn't buy into it right away, right? I was still kind of embarrassed. It was still new to me, and plus I didn't know what to do. How do you get into this, right? Most people go to church. I didn't go to church. That was just the last place that I would ever consider going to. Sunday was recovery from Saturday, recovery from Friday, or preparation to go out to another club.
Hey, we got to do a break here, but
okay.
That's a good stopping point. Let's come back to how that developed.
Thanks.
And we want to hear the rest of this. So let's go to a break, and we'll hear the rest of the development after we come back. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Carolina sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi. My name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show there every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Teachers, children, methods to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios.
Hey everybody, it's Ted Shire, your host for Jet Radio. Ray Lewis is with us today, and Ray was describing his mom's story of transformation and how that helped him. And now he's going to develop that for us and tell us how over time he came to adopt that transformation for himself. So Ray, looking forward to hearing the rest of the story here.
Thank you. Again, it's great to be here and to kind of remind myself of what a marvelous transformation it has been. Well, my mother...
it took some time.
Yeah,
so that's where we...
Yeah, it took some time, after she vividly shared with me the substitutionary death of and what that to me, and how that could create the change and the satisfaction I was looking for. So both my wife and I went through a couple crises. She had a bad car accident. I had a terrible motorbike accident. Life was spiraling out of control. And I was, again, still selling dope and hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I just felt out of control. There's a couple times that God sent my way some people to help me. It's amazing how he does that. You know, when you hear the song that says that God has the whole world in his hand, he certainly does. And God sent the unlikeliest people to talk to me and to further make this faith real to me. One of the guys was a drug dealer. They used to call him Big Doe because he handled a lot of money. And he was a partner of mine. We were in a nightclub together, snorting cocaine. And I was left alone in the bathroom and just adjusting my tie and getting ready for another, night of fun and frolicking. This voice. I heard a voice inside, and it said, "Son, you don't belong in here." Just like that. And I looked around, and there was nobody but me in the bathroom, so I thought, uh-oh, I'm flipping out. It's got to be the drugs, because there's nobody else in here but me. And when I opened the door, the sight I saw, I'll never forget. So different, so dark, so sinister. It was almost like God was allowing me to see what sin looked like. Like if you would pull the curtain back, like on The Wizard of Oz, when you pull the curtain back and you saw the little man operating everything, God pulled the curtain back of flesh, of humanity, and I saw spiritual realities at work. I mean, the behind the scene, what makes us do wrong and act wrong and rebel. And I saw that in people and in myself. And it frightened me. And so I felt like the air was being sucked out of my lungs. So I had to get out. I said, I got to go out and get some fresh air. So I started walking and walking faster and faster and faster. And so when people saw, I'm a big guy. And so when people saw that, they thought a fight was breaking out. So folks were scrambling and you could hear, fight or whatever. And my buddy, Big Doe, caught me at the front door. He grabbed me. He says, "Ray, what's wrong, man? Explain yourself. What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know, but I've got to go outside." So we went outside and I took off my suit coat and threw it over my shoulder. We walked around the corner in the night. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, man. Maybe because I don't have a relationship with my father. Maybe because I'm not playing ball anymore. Maybe because. And I'm going to move to California. And that's what I need. Another venue, another place. And he looked at me and he said, "No, Ray, that's not what you need. You need Jesus in your life." And I looked, so quizzical. I said, I what? Like, dude, you got a pocket full of cocaine in one pocket and a pocket full of money in the other. You're notorious. But he said, "I have a grandmother at home, and she tells me that when you get to this place in your life, only Jesus can help you." Now, that's why I said God rules the world, and everything, comes under his subjection when he intends to get this message to you. This happened to me one more other time with one of my girlfriends, one of my many girlfriends, but this is one. I left one place, took one girlfriend's car, left my wife to go see another girlfriend in another state, Miss Biology at Jackson State University. And when I got with her in our hotel room, I start crying. I mean, just really sobbing. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know. There's something happening to me." And she said, "You need Jesus in your life." Same words. This is a girl that I'm seeing, right? And I'm married. And she said, "I have an aunt at home. And she tells me that whenever you get to this place in your life, only Jesus can help you." This is the second time, verbatim, same words. And I was shocked beyond measure, beyond measure. So I start seeing that there was a reality taking place. Now God, so structured and strategic, moved two ministers next door to my house on either side. I lived in an apartment complex. He moved one guy on one side and another one on the other side. And they were young. They were one of them was younger than me and one was older than me. But at least they were in my age bracket. They weren't like my mother, right? And somebody that spoke my language. And one guy I used to hide from, like when I'd come in late at night and he'd be out on the balcony looking in the stars, and I would hide because I didn't want to hear this. I know he's going to talk to me and tell me I'm a dirty, rotten sinner, and which I knew I was. And so I'd stay, hidden for a while. And I said, "Wait a minute. What am I doing? I'm a grown man, and plus I live next door. I got to go inside." So I passed by him and he stopped me just like I thought he would. But the conversation was different. He didn't bash me. He didn't condemn me. And he talked about this amazing God that could change your life. And he said, "Ray, look up at the stars." It was a beautiful night in New Orleans. He said, "Look at those stars out there." He said, "The God I'm talking about knows every one of them by name." That's really every star he knows by name, and he knows you, and he wants to change your life. And all the people that's surrounding your life don't really care about you. All your friends and all your posse and your entourage, they don't really care about you like he. Friday, Saturday night, there was a big party that I was invited to. He says, "I tell you what," and it was nobody but God that told him to do this. He said, "I tell you what, I'm going to prove to you that nobody cares about you. I want you to go to that party, and this time don't say anything like you usually do. Just go stand against the wall and don't say anything. And I guarantee you'll see just how much they care about you." So I was like, "Yeah, right, sure. I'm Ray Lewis, man. I'm the party don't start until I get there, right?" So I went to this party and I stood against the wall, and people passed by me like I was the invisible man. It's like I didn't exist. And that touched me so deeply. I said, he's right. He's right. And the guy next door to me witnessed to me in such a beautiful way. And, in my last experience, I was leaving a buddy's home who was a coke dealer. And we got high and was making our plans for another Saturday night. And this was during the day. I left his house. And I was crossing this basketball court to go to my apartment. Everybody's out in this crowded complex, waxing their cars, getting ready for the night, throwing footballs, shooting hoops. And as I crossed the basketball court, God spoke to my heart. And I heard this on the inside, I heard these words like, if you take one more step, I'm done with you forever. That's what I heard. That's what arrested me. And this sense of urgency shocked me, but it was real. And I dropped to my knees, right out in the open air. All the folks watching, I dropped to my knees, and I felt so embarrassed. And my hands went up in the air like you could have swore the police was behind me with a pistol. My hands went up in the air, and I didn't know what to say. And that's what I said. I said, God, I don't know what to say. I don't know any scriptures like my mother knows. But she told me that at times like this, you're the only one that can rescue me, that you died for my sins, and that if I call on you, that you would save me. Lord, I need you. I need you for my marriage. I don't have any really friends that care about me. Come into my life. Change my life. I've made a mess of my life so far, and it's not getting any better. And I want to trust you with my life. And with simple words, with those simple words, God broke through, or I broke through to him, or we were connected. I felt connected. I did not see my surroundings. I didn't see any of the people anymore. I didn't care anymore. I felt like I was talking to God. You know, I mean, it was one of those moments. And God spoke to my heart, and he said these words, son, you'll never be the same again. Just like that. That was it. You'll never be the same again. Now, this was without going to church and being led, you know, of reading the 4 spiritual laws or any of that. I came to Christ. And so I was crying because I was so saddened at what the results of what my sin had done to cause him to go to Calvary. But I was happy because I had finally found what I was looking for in life. So it was a mixture of laughter and crying and sadness and joy. And Ted, I was crying. I mean, not just tears from my eyes, but my nose was wet, and I mean, I was just letting it go. So I went to my apartment complex. My wife was at the table. I opened the door. She says, what's wrong? You been fighting? I said, no. I kept pointing to that parking lot. I said, to the basketball court. I said, I just talked to God out there. She said, you what? I just talked to God out there. And he told me that I'll never be the same again. And she said, here's the question. You want to go to church? Ted, I never wanted to go to church. I want to go to the club. I want to go to some girl's house. I want to go to my drug buddy's house. I don't want to go to church. But I said, yes, I want to go to church. That was a Saturday. Ted, I was feeling so good. I left to go, I was smoking cigarettes at that time. I left to go get a pack of cigarettes, and I start witnessing immediately as to what happened to me, to the guy in the elevator, to the postman that was in the neighborhood, to the checkout person in the counter, to the people in line, and everybody I could, telling them what just happened to me a moment ago. That night, I couldn't go to sleep fast enough because I just knew that when I awakened the next morning, it was going to be a mirage. I knew it. That this is not really happening, and I'm going to wake up to that same stale Ray Lewis. But that morning I woke early, Ted, early. And I looked out my back balcony, and it looked so new, so fresh. The trees, the grass, my body, literally, I looked at my hands, and my flesh looked different. My wife looked different. Life looked different. And I went to church that day. I didn't have a suit, like church suit. I had on my club clothes. And I sat up front. Now, look, I went to this black Baptist church that my grandmother attended. You know who sits in the front row, Ted? Ministry people, clergy. I sat on the front row, right over where the women sat, the deaconess and the mothers and stuff like that. I sat over with them. I didn't know any better. And the preacher preached, and every time I heard something that touched my heart, I stood up, and one old lady said, "Not now, son, not now." So I sat down. And he'd say something else about I had crying, and she said, "Not now, son, not now." And then finally, at the end of his message, they give an invitation. I had no idea, the church structure. And in the black churches, they say, now the doors of the church are now open. And I thought, what does that mean? You mean they closed the church behind me? I'm locked in? But what they meant was, it's now time to respond to the message. And the little old lady says, "Now, son, go now, go now." And I stood up in front of the church with tears in my eyes. And I shared to them what happened to me the day before on that basketball court and how God changed my life. And he told me, "Son, you'll never be the same again."
Hey, let's go to a break right there. It is a beautiful story, and I can relate so much to that. Let's talk a little bit more about that when we get back.
Okay,
so
good.
Thanks for joining us today.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that not having more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. Get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, I want to talk to your manager." And I get on the phone, they're like, "That technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever." That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what no matter.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
back to Jet Radio. I'm Ted Shire, your host, and Ray Lewis is with us today, telling us his story of transformation. I can relate to so much of Ray's story. I came from a broken home myself, but one thing that I wanted to point out is just I had my own transformation experience that was like Ray's in terms of a completely different set of circumstances. But I was suicidal for 3 years because my identity was too based on my work. Mm-hmm. And God is the one that broke through and gave me peace, and in a way not too dissimilar from what Ray described. And you go through these different stages, and what Ray is really describing is the real God in the real world, and that process of transformation happens all over the world, in many different people. In fact, it's basically he's describing these stages that everyone goes through when they come to know God, and I went through those myself, and so there's sort of a period of relationship building, of wooing in a sense that Ray described, and then it comes to a turning point, and then you wonder if you're gonna just whether it really was a turning point, whether you're gonna go back to your old ways. And then you realize that it's real. Over time, you realize that it's real. And Ray, if you could tell us, just how that led to your ministry, and finish out if there was some more development you wanted to do, finish that out. But tell us how that led to your community work.
Okay, great. One of the things I want to say is that my transformation experience is typical, but it's not. I mean, I had what's called a Damascus Road experience, the way that God met me and changed my life. It didn't happen in a ceremonial, ritual church experience. It happened outdoors, outside, alone, just he and I. And but that's no different from the kid that grandma talks to at the bedside, and when the kid feels their need for a savior. And my salvation is no greater or lesser than that kid that gets saved at age 8 and lives a life for Christ. And how I wish that would have been my experience, because while when I share my experience, it sounds to the average Christian exciting and eventful and glamorous, but I want to tell you, there's nothing glamorous about the way that I lived. And I still have much regret for the shame, for the sin, for the things I participated in, for the carnage and the wreckage that I left behind, and the scars that I still bear from those experiences of life without Christ and living in a sin-cursed world. So, but I'm grateful that God, through His grace and mercy, right, in spite of me, He rescued me. And He didn't design a jacked up life for me just so that He could show me how gracious He was. That came from living in a world that's riddled with sin. So after I came to Christ, since I was so popular, God used my popularity to bring other people to Christ. I mean, really, they were amazed that I had this new conversation now. And I was talking to people the best I knew how to come to Christ. And that was funny. The only Bible I had in my house, Ted, was that big, huge family Bible. The big one that you put birth certificates in and all that stuff, and it's open to Psalms, the one that you see in the church, the big one. That's the only one I had. I used to hide my dope in there, or hide money I didn't want my wife to find in it, but we never read it. You just open it to a Psalms and leave it there. You know what I'm talking about. But I didn't know any better. I used to carry that out on the street and talk to people about Christ, and then had the nerve to wonder why they were running from me, right? So God helped me to understand how to be skillful in sharing the word. And I got embarrassed so much out there being a novice and talking to people who knew just a little bit more about religion and about Christianity. Maybe they didn't know Christ, but they knew more about it than me, and asking questions that I had no idea what they were talking about. So God gave me a teaching time, and I literally closed the doors, got on my knees, prayed and studied and fast, prayed and studied and fast for months. And of course I worked, but I'd come back and pray and study and fast until I began to learn, how to witness, what to say, when to say it, how much to say, right? When people were open, when they weren't open. And God blessed me in that a lot of people in my housing complex came to know the Lord. And we started having, there were so many of us now that we started having home Bible study. And it grew to the point where every room in my house was filled and people were peering in through the windows to hear and to see the sight. Ray Lewis, saved, carrying a Bible, talking to people about Christ. And so that brought, people at least to hear, and people began to get saved. And there were so many of us now that we said, we're too big for houses. And other people says, well, come over to my house. My house is a little bigger. And they'd invite their relatives and people would get saved. And we do that every night of the week. Like 6 nights a week, we'd have home Bible studies everywhere. And so God blessed us, and people came to Christ from all over. And then we bought some equipment, megaphones and speakers. And we used to go to the dangerous housing complex in New Orleans. I mean, some of the most treacherous, Fisher Project, Callio, Melpomene, Ninth Ward, Magnolia Project, some of the, real vicious places. And we'd plug our megaphones up, electronic megaphones, and them little suckers were loud. And we'd preach the word. And we'd go to places called The Gap and The Grove and street corners and busy byways and Canal Street in the business district. And we go to the Garden District where the rich people live, and we'd preach the gospel everywhere we went. And God enabled us to open a church. We rented this little storefront. It used to be a furniture store, but it had a natural platform, and I said, well, this looks like a church. So we started there, and we grew, and then we moved to another place, and then we finally built a church. I met a guy named Vernon Sleeth, which was a missionary that was sent from Minnesota to after one of the world wars to New Orleans to do ministry work, and he was an evangelist, and he preached to the soldiers, and he had a clothing and food ministry, and he was very, very popular, and started a church. He had a Bible bookstore, which became one of the largest Bible bookstores in the Deep South. Good News Bookstore. He had a street named after him, Sleeth Drive. He had a church there, and very popular. And he was one of the national speakers. So wherever he went, right? Well, after I met him, actually, I met him in the bookstore. I was looking for some Bible material, and he was such an evangelist. He'd chase you down the aisles to find out if you really knew the Lord or not. He's a little guy, a little white guy. Now remember, Ted, This was the racially charged Deep South, separate but equal. I had no white friends, none. And this little white guy was chasing me down the aisles to find out if I knew the Lord. And I said, with excitement, yeah, just a month ago, I accepted the Lord. And, I told him my story, and he was so happy till he reached out his arms and he hugged me. And there we were in the aisles. And he's like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And I didn't know what to do. This white guy, never been hugged by a white guy. We used to fight white guys. I used to get arrested by white guys, but never hugged them. And when I hugged him, Ted, he was so small. He's a little guy. He came to about my mid-chest. When I hugged him, my arms wrapped completely around him. And I looked at my hands, and I had this tattoo on my hands that says hate, H-A-T-E, because I hated white people. I hated my life. I hated the Deep South. And when I looked at that and I looked at him, hate changed to love. So we became buddies, and he mentored me and helped us to develop our church, and he started inviting other missionaries to come and speak to us. And that little church in New Orleans had missionaries come to visit us from all over the world, from Africa, from Asia, from different parts of this country. And I grew, and I learned how big God was and the scope of his work around the world. And when he would go to speak at these national conferences, he would invite me.
Keep going.
Oh, he would invite me and introduce me as his son. This is my son, Ray Lewis. And one of the places we came to was Des Moines, Iowa in 1980 to a Cornerstone Church, Cornerstone Community Church, and which was one of the Brethren movement. And I was the only black face there, me and another guy named Donovan Case. And so I didn't know what they were talking about. They had a real deep discussion going on, a biblical balance between Arminianism and Calvinism. And so that was too really high for me. But it was good to be there. It was good to be with Vernon. And that next year, that church asked me to come back and what I host as a camp director, a week of camp for these urban kids that lived in Des Moines. They tried to do it, but they were upper middle class white people that felt out of touch with the urban lifestyle. So they invited me. And I said,
we're down to about a minute, but kind of wrap that up.
Okay.
And just describe how you would like to go forward with your community ministry.
Okay. So that developed into many trips over the summer here. We finally moved here. And was missionaries at that church. We started a huge ministry called Inner City Lights, a youth ministry. We partnered with Andy Bales and Good Samaritan Urban Ministry, and since then I've worked as a church planter and working racial reconciliation and helping churches to grow. So that's kind of where I am now. I am like Gladys Knight and the Pips, I'm a Pip. I help pastors, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm at Faith Missionary Baptist Church, and I do this ministry in various churches on the big picture of the Old and New Testament. And it's one look from 10,000 feet at how the Bible works, and to look at this one coordinated, redemptive theme of what God is doing in the world.
Yeah. Ray, thanks so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
And I wish we had more time, but we're out of time. But maybe at another time you could talk more about what you'd like to do in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to.
Thanks for coming today.
You're welcome.
All right. Ray Lewis has been with us today. He described his transformation story and how he wants to use that in the wider world. Thanks for joining us today. And join us again next time for more stories of sustainability and transformation.